Welcome to another Michael Sonbeek Talks to People podcast. I'm joined with Newsday writer Tim Healey. He writes for the Mets. Hey, Tim, how are you?
Excellent. How are you?
Good. So, how's the move been from South Florida to New York?
The move has been good. The move has been slow, but it's been good. I started the job mid-spring training and didn't actually move out of my South Florida place until last week after the Mets Marlins series. So it's been a slow process in terms of permanently moving myself to New York, but the job is great. So that's all you can ask for.
Do you like it better up there, than South Florida? Because I know you're a East Coast type of guy, but
Yeah. Well, I'm from up there. I grew up in Connecticut, so I'm a seasons guy. I don't mind the cold and snow and things like that, and it's good to be back near friends and family. So the job was awesome for a lot of reasons, and that was definitely among them. Nothing against South Florida.
yeah, no. I honestly had no clue it could snow in April. As someone
Yeah.
that lives down here and is born down here, I first of all, I've never seen snow, and I did not know it was possible for that to even happen.
Indeed, it is.
Yeah, that's crazy. But the most important question is, did you find your Chipotle?
I am aware of a Chipotle near my new apartment, which is important. I have not been there yet,
Mm-hmm.
but I know it exists. And I'm in Atlanta right now, and there's one around the corner from my hotel. So I like to think that I'm generally aware of all Chipotles near me at a given moment.
That's good.
And I hope to keep that up in New York.
Yeah, because my brother actually moved up there, and that was one of his biggest concerns too, of trying to find a Chipotle. So
Fortunately, they're everywhere, it seems.
yeah. So what's with the Mets, man? This hot start, this isn't what we're used to.
No, it's not. It was funny too when the Mets came out of the gate, something like 11-1, I think, 9 wins in a row. The fans didn't really know how to react. They weren't sure if they should believe it or get happy or be optimistic. It was kind of funny given the mindset of the fan base being generally, oh, something's gonna go wrong. But yeah, the Mets have been really good. Less so the last few days. They've lost 3 out of their last 4, but overall 13-5. I think anybody inside or outside the organization would absolutely sign up for that out of the first 18 games. I don't think it changes really what my expectations are for the Mets this season. I thought heading into the year that they could be a wild card team if they stay healthy, and I still think that's their most likely reality. I don't think they're better than the Nationals.
Yeah, the Nationals are off to that slow start, but we know they're going to turn that around.
Exactly, yeah, especially once they have all of their pieces back, especially Daniel Murphy, who hasn't played for them yet. But yeah, I mean, enjoy the hot start while it lasts. Those are wins that nobody can take away from you. Like they say, every win in April counts just as much as September. So 13 down, maybe 70 to go, 70 plus to go. We'll have to see how the next few months for them go.
Well, what's been good is they're winning on the road. They're 6-1 on the road, which is, I mean, tied in the lost column as for the best in baseball.
Yeah. They swept their opening road trip, 6 games against the Nationals and Marlins last week, and that was the first time I believe since 1991 that they swept a road trip 6 games or longer. And a lot of the best Mets weren't even alive then, so I think that goes to show how hot of a start they had.
Yeah, but can you give us something about Matt Harvey? Like, what's the plans with him? From what I've read from you and other Mets beat writers, is a bullpen demotion is possible, and a minor league demotion is possible.
Yeah, I think all things are on the table right now for them. The situation with the Mets is Jason Vargas, who they signed as a free agent to be in the rotation, is going to come back in about a week. He
Mm-hmm.
had a broken non-throwing hand, which means one of their existing starters is going to have to get bumped. That's Harvey, Steven Matz, or Zach Wheeler. Now, Harvey, of course, found himself in the spotlight last night because he was pitching and pitching poorly. So of course, all the attention goes to, okay, maybe Harvey's going to be the odd man out. If he's not starting, then you really only have two options: bullpen or the minors. He was asked about how comfortable he might be going to the bullpen, and he didn't really answer the question, or he answered the question by saying, "I am a starter. I've always been a starter." So he was, somewhat defiant there. Then asked if he was, willing to accept an assignment to the minors, which he would have to accept because of his service time.
He's
He
not
said he
on.
was. Yeah, he does. He does have, he has an option, but he would have to approve the use of that option because he's been in the majors for 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he said he wasn't willing to answer that question right now, which is honestly it seemed like a really honest and fair question.
Yeah.
That would be a lot to ask of a guy who's been up since what, 2012.
Yeah, 2012. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it's not a good time to be Matt Harvey. The Mets haven't said yet what their decision is going to be. Mickey Callaway Thursday night said he couldn't commit to Harvey getting another start. Harvey was more optimistic because he finished his start with three scoreless innings. So it's going to be a developing situation, to say the least. And if they're going to take Matt Harvey out of the rotation, I would love to be a fly in the room, but I would be glad to not be the guy to have to tell them.
Yeah. Have they been expressed what role he would have in a bullpen? Like, would he be a long reliever or a high leverage situation?
They haven't. My guess would be that if that came into fruition, or if they move any of their starters to the bullpen, my bet would be they try him in very controlled situations to start out with, since neither Harvey nor Matz nor Wheeler have ever relieved as professionals, really. And if he proves to be effective in that role, in those controlled situations, then maybe you try to get him some higher leverage spots if you need it. But they haven't gotten that far. They haven't gotten that far.
I mean, I feel like he could be, like, he sees the success that Jesselman and Lugo has had from being a starter to a bullpen and pitcher, and kind of like embrace it.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope a guy would have that mindset, and people always say, "I'll do what's best for the team," yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
In right now, Matt Harvey in the bullpen might be what's best for the team. Matt Harvey doesn't seem particularly open to that, but at the same time, too, Gesellman and Lugo, they were guys that just wanted to make the opening day roster, and that's a big difference from Matt Harvey being Matt Harvey. The
superstar.
Exactly, former superstar, fall from grace, whatever you want to call it. It could be a hard pill to swallow coming from the heights that he's come from.
Is he on the Mets after July 31st?
I'd say yes, but there's a lot that can happen between now and then. So it's not impossible. If he completely falls on his face, whether he stays in rotation or falls on his face as a reliever, by July 31st, there's only 2 months left until he'd hit free agency. Mm-hmm. So, you couldn't rule it out.
Yeah, because, I mean, the number's just not good. 6 ERA, 4.7 FIP. I mean, having a FIP of about a run and a half, a little bit less than a run and a half on your ERA is not bad, but when it's still 4.70, it's not good.
Right.
And it's about like 70% of his hits are medium or hard hits, so it's not like he's getting some soft contact. I think Matt Harvey, I know he had the elbow issue, sorry, but his fall from grace is one of the most bizarre things.
Yeah, it's a shame, and you have to think it's health induced. He had the Tommy John, of course, and he had the thoracic outlet surgery, as we've seen. It feels like a growing number of pitchers have in recent years, and he just hasn't been the same since. It's tough to understand. I couldn't even imagine being him, trying to wrap his mind around all that's gone on. But at the same time, the reality is his fastball velocity this month is the lowest it's ever been in his career. So it's maybe not a question of is he just missing his best stuff? It might be this is what Matt Harvey is in 2018.
Yeah. And so moving to like their catching situation,
Yeah.
there had been rumors. I think you shut it down about them contacting the Marlins over JT Realmuto. Is that a thing that might happen, or?
Yeah, it's kind of like the Matt Harvey July 31st question. You can never rule it out, but at the same time, there's been no sign that the Mets and the Marlins would be a match for JT Realmuto, aside from the obvious on paper match.
Uh-huh.
The main problem is the Mets' ability and willingness to pay the price for Realmuto. The Marlins, of course, are asking, or in the over the offseason had been asking a lot of teams that were interested. Victor Robles, say, from the Nationals, and the Mets simply don't have a prospect of that caliber.
Yeah, as someone who follows the Marlins more than the Mets, I've been saying if I'm the Marlins, the only person I ask for is Ahmed Rosario, and there's no way that the Mets would ever do that.
Yeah, and that's an interesting, trade proposal or the start to one, because let's go back to a year ago. Ahmed Rosario was, I think, a top 5 prospect in baseball, crushing in AAA, and trade value theoretically at an all-time high. Um, which would you rather have? That Ahmed Rosario, who hadn't yet touched the majors, or this Ahmed Rosario, who has been in the majors, is only 22, but hasn't really experienced much success?
Yeah.
It's funny. It's kind of like driving a new car off the lot. As soon as you buy it and leave, the value depreciates. As soon as you bring a prospect up to the majors and they're exposed in any way, is that player's trade value less? Probably is. Whether it should be or not. It's kind of a weird thing about the way prospects are perceived and treated. But yeah, agreed. The Mets' Victor Robles is Ahmed Rosario, and the Mets view him as their shortstop of the present and future. So I think they'd be hesitant, obviously, to give him up in a Realmuto trade. So yeah, they're in a tough spot catching wise, and I don't know if they really have any options as far as Realmuto goes, unless they want to package several of their more medium level prospects, high in their system, but medium as far as the baseball picture is concerned.
Yeah, and I just don't see the Marlins pulling a trigger on that.
Yeah, me neither.
But I mean, with Jose Lobaton and Thomas Nido, you can't. I just feel like you can't be a playoff team and rely on those two to catch.
Yeah,
I mean, the offense is just not there.
The offense is not there, and Mickey Callaway has gone as far as to say, and this is a direct quote: "Offense is something you can't expect," which is, and that's harsh words, but the reality of calling up a prospect from AA and a career backup from AAA. The plan is for the Mets to ride those two for the next couple of weeks. Kevin Plawecki is supposed to be back in, I think, down to 2 to 3 weeks now. Shout out to that Teheran Guerrero fastball for breaking his hand, I guess. And then we'll see what Kevin Plawecki looks like as the more or less full-time starter.
Yeah. So going away from the Mets for a second to the other New York team, since you covered the Marlins, what's up with Stanton?
I don't make quite as much of Stanton's start as I think a lot of people are. He's been a slow starter. He doesn't like the cold. You add in that with a little bit of more pressure, trying to impress his new team, yada yada. I don't worry too much about him. Marlins fans know better than anybody what Stanton is when he finds his way out of a funk. But the thing always was with Stanton, if and when he goes to a big time market with a rabid fan base, it'd be interesting to see how he reacts, how he handles struggles, how he handles now getting booed at home. And he seems to, I'm not around the team, of course, but from what I've read, he seems to be handling it okay, taking it in stride. But 3 weeks in, I'm not really worried about Stanton or anything along those lines.
I'm not worried about his performance, but I still think the reasons that you mentioned, I always thought it was bizarre. He had the Yankees on his list.
Yeah.
He just never seemed like the personality to hit the big city. And I mean, he had it so good here, pressure wise and fan base wise. Because I mean, in 2016, he had that like 2 for 50 something, and
Right.
no one cared.
Yeah.
Like he was a superstar and arguably had one of the worst slumps in MLB history, and no one just cared. And he goes 0 for 5 one game in New York, and he gets booed off the field. So,
Right.
and then I had saw that he, I mean, you probably know this well, that he tried to, I guess in Miami, he would try to avoid the media some nights on bad nights.
Yeah, it was very frustrating. And on good nights too. That's what was weird. It was on good nights. He'd hit 2 home runs, and of course, local reporters would want to talk to him, and then he would take 45 minutes to come out. Of
Yeah,
a,
I
yeah,
saw he tried to do that with the Yankees after the second 0 for 5 strikeouts night,
right,
and that the reporters there just stayed put, and he was just like forced to talk to him after an hour of trying
yeah.
to dodge it.
I love it.
But like, um, do you think though, like, there's the pressure is like that big on him? Like, you think that's the main thing, or do you think it's more of the cold weather
I think it can be
adjustment?
a little bit of all of those things. You hear guys say it all the time. Usually, in hindsight, when they're more willing to be honest, but when they go to a new team, there is that pressure to make the fans like you, to validate the front office's decision to acquire you, all produce to the level that you're expected to produce. All of those things.
Yeah,
And then when you mix that in with his normal Aprils and the crappy weather we've seen in New York and elsewhere, it's just sort of there's a lot of factors going into that. And next thing you know, you strike out more than once out of every 3 at bats for the first 3 weeks.
that's crazy. I I didn't. I was actually surprised that no one had ever gone 0 for 5 with five or hitless with 5 strikeouts in a game, but twice in a season. And it was so
Yeah.
funny he did that in 1 week.
And then he does. Yeah, that was unbelievable. That was a crazy stat to me. That
Yeah,
nobody.
I would have been shocked. I was surprised that Stanton had never done it before.
Right. That seems like something he would have done somewhere along the way.
Yeah,
Um,
like
I was
I
I
was
was
shocked.
surprised at that.
That's crazy. Anyway, go. I just wanted to know your opinion on that. Going back to the Mets. What's an update on David Wright?
David Wright, man, it's another sad story, but maybe probably even definitely in a sadder way than Harvey. He in mid-March was shut down. They said for 8 weeks from baseball activity. So that means mid-May at the earliest he will try to do basic baseball things like fielding, maybe throwing, swinging, things like that. Starting from the very bottom. So there aren't a lot of expectations as far as David Wright's on-field performance or return. A lot of people just don't expect it to happen, which is really unfortunate. The fan base actually, and I hesitate in taking a couple of tweeters and calling them the tone of the fan base, but people have thrown out the idea of why doesn't he just retire? And it's a fair question.
Mm-hmm.
But David Wright, every time he's spoken to the media, has remained upbeat about his situation and says that he wants to do everything he can possibly do to try to get back. And he's acknowledged that it may never happen, but he says that for his own mindset and pride, that he needs to know he tried everything before calling it. And it's hard to knock that. That's a lot. Everybody respects David Wright. He's in a bad spot, so you kind of let him ride it out. See what he wants to do.
Yeah, I mean he's played 75 games in the past 2 seasons and hasn't played a full season since 2012. So
Right.
I mean, I've often honestly have said the same thing. Wondered why he hasn't retired. I feel like every time he's close, he just has another setback, and I would think that gets frustrating, especially from someone who's done it all. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing left for David Wright to prove in baseball.
Yeah, the two things there too is do you quit just because it's frustrating? I don't know. For a guy who's so used to being on top of the world, being a world class athlete for so long, probably not. And then the other reality is the money. If he retires, he doesn't get the money. I think it's something like 40 plus million owed to him over the next couple of years by the Mets. So if he retires, the Mets don't have to pay him. But if he keeps trying to rehab, then he still keeps getting paid. So, I don't know how much of a factor that is for him personally, but that's a factor.
So, a couple more things before I wrap this up. So, I know you weren't with them last year, but what from the players that you've talked to or people that's been around the team you talked to, what's been like the main difference between under the new manager than Terry Collins? Or does it even make a difference? Or are they just playing good baseball?
They are playing good baseball, and I think the players first and foremost deserve the credit for their 13-5 start. And I think, generally speaking, managers' influence, good or bad, is kind of overblown. But Mickey Callaway has a lot of fans in the clubhouse. They love the way he communicates with them consistently about when they're going to play, why they're going to play, what their roles are, etc. A couple of guys have noted that he's young and he kind of gets them and can relate to them. I think Callaway's only 43. And nobody's said, "Oh, he's young," like not like the old guy we had last year. I mean, but the reality was Terry Collins is an old guy, and he was old-fashioned. But Mickey Callaway is very much in the mold of that new sort of manager that manages the players as far as personal relationships goes, communicates with them. He's analytically inclined, which is another step forward, in my opinion, from what Terry Collins was. You've seen that especially in the bullpen, where it's not really seventh inning guy, eighth inning guy, etc. It's whatever makes sense for the score and situation and who's batting for the other team. That's been, I think, the most impressive thing for me is bullpen management. But yeah, I mean, people like him. His players like him. But you kind of expect that when it's your first spring training and then you get off to a really good start. Hopefully everybody's happy.
Yeah, the Mets seem to be adopting analytics more and more over the years.
Yeah, and it helps too that they've got a field manager who's fully on board with that. It was, I think, something of a battle, as it was with a lot of organizations in recent years, past 5 to 15 years even. But they are more fully in that direction as far as on-field decision-making goes, it seems.
So I'm going to put you on the spot now. Marlins party or Mets Twitter?
In terms of what?
Well, first we'll go overall entertainment, like who's funnier, and then more baseball, like who can you have a more rational baseball conversation with?
Marlins party is way funnier, and even now, still sort of following a bunch of you guys on Twitter, I still get entertainment from it. It's very funny. So big fan of Marlins party.
That's good. We were hurt when you left us.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It got blindsided. Like first it was Hanley, then it was Stanton, but then once you left, it was like that was it. We've been hurt.
And then in terms of rational baseball discussion, Marlins Twitter is a big thing, and when you have any population, you're going to have smart people and stupid people, or people who want to be reasonable and people who just want to be mad on Twitter. But Marlins party specifically is like the smarter segment of Marlins fans. So I think almost all of those conversations were pretty rational. So I mean, I've enjoyed my dabbling with Marlins Twitter. With Mets Twitter, excuse me. But Marlins party is always going to be something special in my heart.
Something in your heart. Your first, because the Marlins were the first MLB team you covered, right, on the beat.
Yeah, first time on a full-time beat. Yeah.
So, I mean, your first MLB Twitter, it's always your most special one.
Exactly. You never forget your first, as they say.
Yeah. Is there anybody like too crazy on Mets Twitter? Because I mean, I know Marlins Party has their people, or Marlins man just is. I know he's not Marlins Party, but he's just really crazy person, Marlins fan.
Don't even get me going on Marlins, man. But on Marlins Twitter, I mean, they have their characters. They have some in this with along the same lines as Marlins Party. There are some very smart, engaged, involved fans on the Marlins Twitter side. As far as other characters that stick out, everybody likes to make fun of the one they call Reyes Virus guy. Um, he is some dude, and I don't know what his deal is, so I don't want to make fun of him or anything, but he has a lot of accounts, and he's always tweeting about Jose Reyes being a virus. So like his first go around with the Mets collapsed, and then he went to the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays were supposed to be good, but they were bad, and now he blames every bad thing that the Mets have going on right now on Jose Reyes. So he's definitely a standout character of Mets Twitter as it exists right now.
So you say don't get you started on Marlins man, but I want to get you started on Marlins man.
This guy, I know he either says he does or actually does. I don't know. Do a lot of good charity work, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I give him props for that. Like that's awesome. But he just comes off as such an attention-seeking goober. You know what I mean?
He's
like, if you first of all, like, go back to the start with the orange jersey thing. I give him props for, if he's a big Marlins fan, sure, represent the Marlins. But if you wear a bright orange shirt on national TV and you buy those seats all the time, like, you're just looking for attention.
I want to get him on here just to simply ask him if he has one Marlins jersey and he continues to wash it, or his full closet is just filled with orange Marlins jerseys.
That's a good question. I would listen to that podcast.
I think he's a lawyer, so I can like totally just see him like just going into work in his stupid pajama pants and a orange Marlins jersey.
Yeah, it's a good question. And the other thing too is he was at the Mets game against the Nationals a couple nights ago.
Yeah.
In the first inning, I noticed him. All right, there he is behind home plate in his bright orange Marlins jersey. And then in the second inning, he's missing. Somebody else is in those seats. And when you're watching on TV, you can kind of see, several more rows. And you see him kind of walking around. And I don't know what he was doing, but it was very strange that he was in those seats to start the game. And then all of a sudden, he's wandering around in the background and somebody else is in those seats. So I need somebody to do some serious investigative journalism and find out what Marlins man was doing.
I've already shot him a DM to try to get him on. He's been ignoring me. So you wouldn't ride in the Marlins man mobile?
Probably not. I don't want to get in a car with a stranger unless it's Uber, really. But if you get him on, if you're trying to get his attention, maybe just tweet the keywords Marlins man. Don't tag him. Just tweet, because he'll see it that way.
Yeah, and I had never seen someone so unaware of himself, especially
super aware.
Super aware. I'm sorry. And when he got, were you? I don't know if you were still for the town hall. Were you?
I wasn't. I was off that day.
Oh, you were off that day.
Yeah.
When he got on the mic and asked Derek Jeter if he knew who he was.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not what you want.
And then, offering Marlins man Mondays, and for him to throw out the first pitch, that man really believes people are coming to see him.
Well, he's very much about the brand.
It's so funny to me. Like, I think he's hilarious because at the end of the day, he's not harmful.
Yeah,
he doesn't do anything, and he's just such an easy target to make fun of. And you see Barstool, they'll totally mock him, and he thinks they're with him, and it's just so funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, Thank you so much for coming on, Tim.
Anytime.
I appreciate it.
Happy to.